an optimist. Ah, humbug.
Okay, uh, that's the start of our call is bah humbug, but we actually welcome all of you to our PCI community forum called Delighted to Have You with us. Kevin Clark, your host, and today is an open mic. Let me just check around. I want to see what topics we have that are brewing in background. I know, Brian, you have a topic that you want to share, and that's great. Thanks for letting me know in advance. You are absolutely on the agenda. Do we have other topics that we want to talk about today?
I have a couple.
Okay, Mike Nelson. Great.
I have one on Pacific, integrating Pacific development initiatives with the Caribbean.
Okay, Lynn, great.
The big one, and this may be a little off topic from since this isn't strictly internet, but Governor Newsom vetoed this first attempt to regulate artificial intelligence in California. I personally think that was a very good decision because the bill was so poorly drafted. But at the same time, he did sign another bill on transparency of data, and he set up a whole process on what should be done in this area. So that's, again, that might be.
Well, we will get to it.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I'm interested in all of it.
And he also banned cell phones in schools, which I think is terrible.
Okay.
So we can talk about
what's your
that
other
too.
topic? Just
Well, the other one's much more personal, and it's really it's sort of a 90-second thing. But I'm headed to Bangalore on Saturday for a meeting organized by Carnegie India. It's the Global Technology Summit Innovation Dialogue. Most of it is about digital public infrastructure, which India has been leading the charge on. But if anybody on this call knows anybody that I should check out or meet with in Bangalore, I have a few extra days to do such things.
Okay, put it in the chat.
I do, and I will put it in the chat.
Okay.
So
and I will
request
also
in
put a
chat.
link to the agenda for the meeting. I think you'd find the agenda very interesting. There's a larger version of the Global Technology Summit that will be held in February in Delhi. And that's been going on for about 7 years now. Really exceptional meeting.
So other topics that we're going to cover today, anybody else have anything else that they want to bring up?
I have a topic about publishing, about speaking. And if anybody's interested in public speaking, there's a seminar coming up in actually an hour that I think you should attend.
Okay. And Richard Boyd has a topic. Richard?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how well, I mean, I think this is appropriate for this group, but I've been having some interesting conversations in the intelligence community, as you know, Kevin, about information warfare. That conversation continues. And one of the things I'm thinking about is how to use the medium of simulation to help sort of create the next generation of people that work in that field to try to combat disinformation.
All right, very good. So I think that will take us to the to 1 o'clock with overtime with those topics. If anything else comes up, you let me know. I want to acknowledge Coco. We're glad to have you back with us, my friend. And I will also put in a word for please think about my neighbors to the western part of North Carolina who are devastated right now in the Asheville region. We're still, trying to, you just can't get things in even by, highway. They're still using a lot of air, helicopters and stuff to get food and supplies out there. It's nasty. So please send positive energy for our North Carolina friends and neighbors that are, living through this moment.
Kevin, is there any evidence that drones would have been helpful in getting stuff, relatively light stuff like medicine, things like that in early, or is it just there was enough helicopters and other assets that you wouldn't have needed that?
They seem to be staging quite well by air, but I don't have an answer. I think they could have used more. in a lot of different ways, but I'm not a disaster relief specialist. Okay,
Yeah,
so
anyway, go ahead.
we're going to start with because he called first and he's prepared, right? He's the Boy Scout of our PCI call today. Brian Donahue has
Thanks.
he is be prepared. He is okay. That's not the exact
Okay.
phrase. So be prepared. We are is the right phrase. So Brian, you have some charts that you want to share. I am
Yes.
opening up
So how do we
the
do
ability
this?
for you to share.
Oh, you have to make me co-host, right? And then I
No,
should be
I
able to
just
post
have to
it.
give you, sharing
Oh,
rights,
okay.
which I have done.
Okay.
And
So if I go to share, I'm ready to go. If
okay,
you all can see this.
we can see the enterprise. Please
Okay.
proceed.
Okay, I got to move you guys out of the way. I want to put it in presentation mode. Let me give you the background. I presented this last Friday for 8 minutes to the Opportunity Project, which is the Department of Commerce, the U.S. Census Bureau, Harvard University, and the National League of Cities. It's in the 15-week sprint is entitled Well-Being and Health and Well-Being, and this is a concept pitch. There were 7 tech teams on the call, which each had about 4 or 5. There probably I represent a tech team called the Enterprise. There were probably 70 people on the call from all around the country, and so this is the concept pitch, and the Enterprise 501c3 was incorporated by me 10 years ago. It's UC Berkeley grown, which means I'm a Berkeley emeriti, and our engineering crew is made up of graduates of the UC Berkeley Masters in Data Science program. And our byline is, we make social data useful for humans. Now it should be advancing. These were the questions that the government wanted me to address, but it's basically who, what, where, when, how, that kind of stuff. Why am I okay? Our 3 end users are clinical health users. Last summer, we participated in a sprint for clinical health, and we successfully built our minimum viable product, which was to take the foundational data from the Census Bureau and put it through our trade secret algorithms and produce useful data for the bedside. So when you all go into your doctors in a year from now, the left-hand side of the screen will be your electronic health record, and the right-hand side of the screen will be your social health record. And so that the healthcare provider in clinical health will be able to see the whole picture of you. It also asks what occupation. So between a person's occupation and where they live, we can present that in a useful way. Our other market is
That's like one of the dogs might have barked.
okay. We also is public health. In other words, we believe that the Department of Public Health in your city and in your county and in your state can use this to have better informed decisions. And then our third market is community health, the local typical nonprofits that deal with cancer support, which we are very close to, youth, drug use, all those kinds of things. So this system would be useful in all 3 of those. Oh, I know what it is. It's taking a time to advance. The slides advance very slowly, Kevin. Why is that?
Brian, a question.
Yeah.
Where would your local pharmacy, say in your Safeway, knowing, what you had been vaccinated for and all that sort of thing, would that be public health or would that be community health?
Well, the thing is, here's what we tell our people. We are not a health company. We are a data science company. So we only provide data science, but in the interest of time, because I want, Kevin, you want me done it by 8 minutes, right? Why are my slides not advancing? I'll do it by hand.
The answer is yes, but keep going, my friend.
Okay, so the framework that we look at is the fact that everyone on this call is experiencing a country where the gross national product, which is spent on healthcare, is going up, up, and up. It's now 18.3% of the budget, which not only that, we are aging longer. You all are going to be living longer than you think you are. Why is this important? Social data influences 50% of your health and well-being. And I'm talking about everyone on this call. Okay. Um, what's the problem? Time. That we don't have enough time for the healthcare provider, the public health worker, or the community health worker. So if you don't have time, basically what we do is we collect the data at all levels, which I'll explain in a second, and then we deliver it to the person who needs it. We have a problem of doctor burnout, and get this, 48,000, a shortage of 48,000 primary care physicians by 2034. The problem, I think you all know, everything is siloed at the federal, state, county, and all private. So what's the solution? Where do you live? What do you do? And integrating that into the pie, okay? Just so you know, the White House, and you probably already know that on November of last year, they issued a directive about the social determinants of health working group within the executive office of the President of the United States. It has reached that level of criticality and visibility, and strengthen, Uncle Sam says, strengthen social data collection and sharing. That's what we do. That's basically what we do. Okay. 2014. Now, who do you know? This is Mei Lin. Most of you know Mei Lin Fung, right? I assume you do. She was one of the founders of our group. Here's Mei Lin right here. And she basically talked me into getting started in healthcare. I'm an intellectual property lawyer. So our system, social data indexing, we get the data and we deliver it to the physician or the practitioner, and then the physician can drill down to the details and discover what is causing the aberration, what's causing the out of cover. Okay, what's our challenge, goal, and what success is looking at the helping. I like the word helping. Should have said that. Helping the whole person. Okay, how do we do it? Our principle, and where do we get the data? This, if you can see my cursor, this is what we've been working on for a year and a half now, Census Bureau data. And our engineering crew right now is adding on top of the Census Bureau, clean air and clean water. Then we'll incorporate, it's like a 15-layer cake, is the way I think about it.
Yeah.
You got
Brian, you got 2 minutes.
2 minutes left. That's fine. I'm ahead of schedule. In fact, so we add a layer on the 15-layer cake of state data and county layer, a local level of privately owned data. We add the data about what do you do for work. We add that into the cloud. For example, what we did last summer, these are the data elements from the Census Bureau. And we have people investigating, criticizing, and improving upon the quality of the data by the federal government, which basically affects all of you all, everybody on this call. It's not advancing, I'm rolling it. That's why our second principle is we have balance in the 5 pillars of health. We get that from this book of slow medicine, which basically says for each of us humans, health and wellness is balancing emotional and mental health for you, individual, everyone on this call, balancing physical health, environmental health, spiritual and safety health, and social health. So if that's the essence of health, we use data science to report on how those factors exist where you live and what you do for work. This is consistent with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which I presume most of you have heard of. The lowest levels of psychological, which is emotional, mental, safety and security, love and belonging. We're by coincidence tracking that. In fact, this is where we ended, because this is the concept presentation. How we do it, we collect this data, we talk about it with a lot of professionals, we load it up into the cloud, put it through our trade secret algorithms, and then deliver it to the doc. So this, in my humble estimation, will be affecting each one of you in the next 3 years. Yeah, baby. I'll conclude there with a minute left.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
Any questions?
Yeah. Thoughts, questions? I saw Richard Boyd put a comment into a chat about 3D BioMe, and I'll point out that PCI has a report on data cooperatives that Maylin and Yasha Stein and others contributed to for the G7 in Italy this summer. So data cooperatives are very highly correlated to what you're talking about here, Brian. Richard, your question?
No, it's more of a comment that, yes, I agree with everything you said. That, during the pandemic, my team had two CARES Act grants. One of them is to look at just population, just general behavior. We modeled all 3,000 counties in the United States, and
Oh, really?
working with colleagues like Kevin Clark and Dr. Richard Carson at UCal San Diego and Dr. Jordan Louvier, who's no longer with us, of course. We modeled and figured out that the infection rates were not just about SEIR models, but also the social determinants. So we modeled, we did a deep dive here in North Carolina. We did some other stuff in the state of Washington, as Kevin knows, and that'll segue into what I'll talk about here in a bit. But I was just going to add that we were a finalist for the X Prize because our infection rate models outperformed those of Johns Hopkins. But it came down to what are the guidances for every county, who lives there, therefore how are they likely to behave, what's the probability of movement and wearing face masks and all that based on who their influencers were and all that stuff. So it gets back to the information warfare stuff that I'll talk about.
Okay.
Right. I mean, my goal is pure data science. In other words, we take all those levels of public, and humbly I say nobody's doing this because what we're doing, and I think it's crucial because the last point I'll make, I ask my young people, do they know what 44 and 99 and 44 100% pure is? And of course they don't. How many of you know what that phrase is? Recognize that phrase? Okay, Mark, what is it? Do you remember what it is? What is it?
It's the soap.
Ivory.
Yeah, ivory soap. And
Yeah.
the point is, we on this call are 99 to 44, 100% the same as the Cro-Magnon man. Human beings need to understand their social factors, and it needs to be hard science and hard numbers. I rest my case, ladies and gentlemen.
Mark,
of
you had your
PCI.
hand up a minute
did.
ago. Are you still asking a question?
I'm still here. So here's what I'm experiencing. I'm happy. I'm living a long life. I'm 78. I'm doing well. The issue, I think, is not so much living a long life with the social factors. That's a piece of it, but living a long life and being able to still afford it. It's having enough money left. And so most of, the people who are fortunate in the world and have enough money are great. The people who don't, the longer they live, the more they suffer. And so that I'm wondering if anybody's addressing that.
Yeah. And so
Well,
rather
money
than going down
money
a
comes.
rabbit hole,
Yeah,
just a
I mean,
short answer.
We haven't. Again, I'm a data scientist. I've spent most of my life broke. I've got 6 kids, 15 grandkids, so I know being broke, and it really weighs down on you. And I think it comes under emotional and mental health.
Yeah.
Is it? So we track incomes, of course, with detail right down to down to the zip code. Here's the concept: you build a 15-layer cake, and then basically someone needs one zip code. you do a horizontal cut through all 15 layers, pull out that data and put it through our algorithms into using it and so it can be useful.
Okay, so Coco is the last question on this topic. And then we're going to go to Mike Nelson and we're going to tee up a new topic. Coco. We can't hear you because you're on mute, sir.
Good. Okay, thank you, Mr. Brian, for the presentations. But it's coming, I have some question coming from my mind. So I don't understand really the purpose of your projects. First of all, are you collecting data? If I understand that you are data scientist, you are not dealing with health stuff. So are you
No, can I
how
interrupt?
are
Let me
you
just answer.
collecting your data?
We are not
Hello?
collecting it. We get it from the government. It's all free from federal, state, county, city, local. And, you know, I'm an IP lawyer. If we need to license private data, that's what I've done all my career. My whole life has been doing that.
Okay. So, okay. The government gave you the data from electronic medical records, or
No, only
how you
public,
deal with?
not electronic health records are protected by HIPAA. We only
Okay,
deal with public open data, which is free
okay,
under the Public Records Act. It's free.
okay. Is your project has a business site?
Does it have it has our website is enterprise.org. Enterprise 501c3.org. Enterprise
Okay.
501c3.org.
Okay.
So you're organized as a not-for-profit 501c3 organization, right?
Well, no. Yes, for the last 10 years, but the enterprise is a research and development company. We also have on the shelf a for-profit company that's ready to take the product
Yeah.
when and then
So
to
that's answering
commercialize
Coco's
it.
question more directly, is that you're
That was
about
my
to do
question. Yes.
translational research that would put it into the marketplace.
Yeah, that's our one of our weak areas.
Okay. Coco,
Thank you.
did that answer your question? Okay,
Thank you.
very
I'm
good.
satisfied. Good.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Now we're going to go to Mike Nelson. Brian, thank you for sharing that with us. Mike, over to you.
I've already provided most of the details about this conference next week in Bangalore, India, organized by Carnegie India. I'll be there. We're talking a lot about digital public infrastructure, one of our favorite topics, and also, of course, about big data, data protection, data empowerment, and its use in machine learning. But I got a few comments, private chats about people to see in Bangalore, and I really welcome that. And I hope people will also look and get more details on the previous global technology summits that Carnegie's held in Delhi. But the other thing I wanted to just throw out there, and it may be that nobody on the call has a strong opinion or has reviewed what California has just done, but Gavin Newsom shot down or vetoed this bill on the big risks of AI. As I say, I do not understand how any capable legislative drafting person allowed it to even get out of committee, because it just has all these fuzzy words like, oh, we want to regulate these systems and similar systems.
Yeah.
Without any guidance on what a similar system would be.
Right.
It's just a nightmare for anybody who's trying to innovate and anticipate how this bill could be used in the future.
So let me ask you a question, Mike. There was one particular aspect of the legislation. I think that Newsom got a lot of advice and counsel on whether he should do this or not, or from a variety of people. But there was a provision in there that every system needs to have a kill switch in it, right? And, we know, from, that, if there was an invasion of Taiwan, that TSMC actually does have kill switches in place for their manufacturing processes. But I don't understand how you would do a kill switch in this technology. Can you, shed any light on whether that's even an achievable goal?
I saw that Richard put his hand up. He might have a better answer. The answer is no, you can't do it. I mean, this is particularly if we're not talking about one grand centralized system. The problem is that there is this thought that all we have to do is tell 6 companies that are working on AI to do these things, and that will take care of it all. But the real threat of that legislation was to the open source community.
Sure.
Which includes people that are building very interesting and very powerful small language models, or or they're doing other things that don't even involve language, large language models. But
Richard, did you have a comment that you wanted to make? I see some other people's hands up. If you did,
it's not that it's impossible to create a kill switch. It's possible. It's difficult. David Brin, the science fiction writer, described this, and we've talked about this with David Bray, who I think is also a part of this group, right? That if you do have a system where every core AI system has a physical address somewhere, but that, how do you legislate that? How do you make sure that that happens is very difficult. Then you can have a physical kill switch, and then the other way to address it is the way we address like flight systems, where you always have 3 AIs that automatically fly an aircraft, and they have to agree with each other before they. So there's a checks and balances thing among the AI, but some combination of those things could get you there, but it's improbable. To your point.
Well, my point was that that's very viable for centralized systems that everyone's tapping into. But if we really get to the democratized AI vision that a lot of people are talking about, it's not at all clear that that could happen. I mean, how would you enforce the kill switch if it's an open source project and people have the ability to just rip out that piece of the code that implements the kill switch? It's
not only that, most of these, almost all these modeled systems are, we don't have a debugger for them, and we don't, even Sam Altman doesn't know how OpenAI works.
Yeah.
They're transparent to inquiry, as we say.
Bruce
I would be interested if people had a list or have seen an article on what good legislation looks like. I mean,
Dream on.
For AI. I mean, this bill was particularly bad because they were trying to regulate the future, and it was really motivated by the fear of the Terminator and Skynet, and the sort of what might happen in 2035 or 2020, 2040.
Yeah.
It wasn't resolving some of the real problems we have already with consumer protection. And
well, Newsom said when he announced his veto that he had alternative legislation that was already being drafted that was better. So I don't know what it is. It's TBD whether it actually is better or not.
Well, they have a team that includes the president of the Carnegie Endowment, who used to be a professor at Stanford and was a member of the California Supreme Court. He's done some very interesting law review articles on AI and what are the concepts here that need to be dealt with. So I was very delighted to see that he was part of it. But the woman in charge of the AI Center at Stanford is also there. She's brilliant. Fen.
Okay. Bruce, your question.
Just a comment. As some of you know, I live about 5 miles from the California state capitol. So I have frequent reason to be in touch with some of those people who work there. And, I just have to tell you that I'm not the least bit surprised at the legislation that was put forward and vetoed by Newsom. But I think that the legislation itself was reflective of the terrible ineptitude of the people who reside there and who are elected to those offices. I mean, the ineptitude is inexplicable. So I just wanted to underscore that. So it's no surprise that we don't have legislation coming out there that's truly excellent. No surprise at all.
I worked
that's
on
the
Capitol
comment.
Hill back in around 1990. And back then you had people who had worked in legislative drafting for 25 or even 30 years. And they would ask the hard questions. They would say, well, what do you really want to do with this sentence? And how can you state this in this section and then 5 sections later say do the opposite? And that's why I think in California they just don't pay people well enough to stay in those state jobs long enough to get good at what they do. Once they got to be good at writing legislation, they go work for lobbyists and they write draft bills, get paid 3 times more, and hand it off to the legislators on the hope that they'll just put it in the bill automatically.
Well, just as a further comment on that, one of the problems you have here,
Richard,
and
I'm going to take your screen down for a second. Okay.
One of the problems that you have there is term limits, and I think that everything has it's a double-edged sword. You have term limits, but what it has done to some extent is that you have taken people who are really knowledgeable in particular areas and simply remove them from office. So
yeah.
On the other hand, you have people getting elected that shouldn't be. So it's a very, very complex problem, but we are a long way from trying to be able to solve it.
Yeah. Very good. One of the things that AI might be able to help with is drafting legislation, that actually meets requirements in a better way so that we don't end up with a lot of junk, at least from a, guidelines point of view. Richard, you were trying to share something, and then I'm going to go to Coco.
Yeah, I was just putting it into chat there as well. Like, it was interesting to me that when I went and briefed legislators on Capitol Hill, both the House and the Senate, when I went through my briefing, first thing I said is, how many of these briefings like this have you had? And they all said at least a dozen. And this was over a year ago. When I walked through my items, I said at the end, I'm like, did you hear anything new? And they said, yeah, what is model collapse? They'd never heard about the fact that there's no debugger. And that was kind of startling to me, that the people I was talking to had really not a very good working knowledge of how machine learning is a very different animal. And yet, so how can you expect them to create legislation when they're not getting good advice?
Yeah.
Or complete advice. I'd say their knowledge was incomplete is a fair way to say it.
100%. Bruce, we have heard you. Coco, you had your hand up a minute ago. Do you still have a question, sir? If you do, you're off mute, please.
Was not really a question, but was maybe a suggestion or just an information about some improvement of internet connectivity in our region. So since Starlink peer into the business, was really dreaming to see some African country go beyond our slow connectivity already. So we don't have more really good bandwidth on the fiber. Wherever we say that we have fiber, but we don't have a good bandwidth on. The Starlink come really to boost innovation is that in that kind of respond to the need of good connectivities. But however, some countries refuse to give a license to Starlink. For example, my own country, the DRC refused to the Starlink to give the license. But yesterday, Burundi signed the license for Starlinks. Rwanda is okay. Kenya also is okay. And Nigeria. Not yet many countries came to Starlink, but somehow we make some orders with my local partner in Rwanda, and our Starlink came today. Our Starlink antenna came today. We hope that in 2 days, we will have a good bandwidth in the office. That's only the news I have, and I would like to share with you.
Well, we're glad to hear that. That's That's fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah.
And when there's
Congratulations.
minimal connectivity, that is a very unique, service these days. Its predecessors, have kind of come and gone, but this seems more durable. Lynn, you are our next person up. Delighted to have your topic. And I'm going to go off for just a second to check on something right here in my backyard, and I'll be back.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So in June, I was invited out to Hawaii to participate in a symposium called PICARD, Pacific Island Climate Adaptation Research and Development. It was sponsored by Eric Rasmussen, who many of you know. And it basically brought together a set of research that's being done across the Pacific, but focused on the Marshall Islands, with an initiative called the CASTLE, the Kwajalein Atoll Sustainability Lab, which is partly funded by the U.S. Naval Office of Research and the Army Climate Office, but it's entirely Marshallese led. The board of directors entirely Marshallese, only one non-Marshallese is the chief science advisor. And Picard brought together about 20 different technologies that briefed in lightning rounds, 6-minute lightning rounds, which ran the gamut from mycelium structures to nano etched graphene desalination filters to social technologies to whatever. For me, the most striking piece was Senator Kabua of the Marshalls, who talked about that the island nations of the Pacific have been thinking of themselves as small island states that have been trying to protect their territory from sea level rise. But in point of fact, the combined exclusive economic zones of the Pacific Island states are larger than China. And they should be thinking of themselves as major oceanic nations charged with the conservancy of the Pacific Ocean. In any case, the technologies and the thinking from the Pacific turns out to be very applicable to Puerto Rico and the Caribbean. And so since Picard, we have been working with various people in Puerto Rico Science Technology Research Trust and other entities to cross-reference some of these technologies, particularly in developing quick wins at low cost that can be brought together, say, between now and January to demonstrate to the incoming administrations of both Washington and Puerto Rico that there are people out there who can do things fairly quickly and effectively, and to see if this might be something that would want to be picked up for further funding and then, after the administration transition. But it's really quite striking, the breadth of the technologies, the synergy among them, and the extent to which they map very closely from the Pacific Island states to the Caribbean. Over.
Okay. Any thoughts, questions?
Yeah, just a clarification. Lynn, did I hear you say that those islands equal the size of China?
The exclusive economic zones, the 200-mile exclusive economic zones, okay, when added together for Melanesia, Polynesia, Micronesia, etc., plus Chile, plus the United States, plus Canada, plus Japan, are actually larger than China.
I see. Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah, okay, I got it.
And it turns out for the Caribbean, if you apply the same things, the countries aboard the Caribbean are roughly the size of the 10th largest country in the world.
No kidding.
Yeah, Lynn, it raises an issue to me, a thought about, and I put in the comment, sort of a self-colonization, a recolonization that they need to rethink themselves in a cultural, economic structure. And a part of decolonizing is in essence a self-colonization and a reestablishment of the future principle for them.
Well, in fact, the entirety of all these discussions has been cultural preservation And the three principles we've been operating with based on the Native American experience with PCI is listening, learning, and lasting, where you start off by just shutting up and listening to what your partners are trying to tell you. But at the end of the grant,
Shut up.
but at the end of but when the grant ends and the students graduate, you have to have left an enduring capacity with the partner so they continue to develop on their own. The second is trusted partners, which is to say, I've mentioned this before, from the Native American work, I can walk into a tribal council anywhere in the United States and be another old white guy come to lie to us. Well, the same thing applies in the Pacific Islands, and I will forever, however good my Spanish gets, I'll always be a gringo in Puerto Rico. So how do you find the people who have cred with the communities you're working with to be able to carry the message? And then the third thing is nothing about us without us. Says, if you don't develop the solution in conjunction with the people who have to use it, it's worthless. You can't just drop the end report on their desk and say, go execute it. So all that comes back to the point you just made on the you need to preserve the cultural preserve, and something that's increasingly important to these states is to increase the understanding of the culture, preserve the language, things like that.
Mark, your hand is up. Question
Yes.
for Lynn.
Yes. So I've been thinking about and working a little bit with, and I don't remember what's the name of the guy who does climate stuff, who's been on our calls a number of times. Gary, maybe, or
Preps?
Krebs, yes, Gary Krebs, about involving young people in these efforts, involving them as a core, as a unified core that goes across islands, as doing this, as having people who can work on this at ages under 25, and all the way down to to primary school. So if that's useful to you, I'd love to have a conversation.
So two things. First of all, one of the core parts of this whole presentation was something called TOTCUS, the ocean that connects us, which actually is a series of high school level sort of clubs, if you will, that range from Maoris in New Zealand all the way across the Pacific Islands to Chilean to Japanese to British Columbians, who get together and talk about the climate related issues and the Pacific Ocean related issues that connect them. And so that maps really, really well to the Caribbean, and we're in the process of trying to set that up right now. Gary, based on what I'm meeting him here, we've had him involved in several of our projects through George Mason, and I had not thought of bringing him into TOTCUS, but it's a perfect fit, and I will go reach out to him. So thank you very much.
Lynn, outstanding idea. And Brian, you are the last question
Can I
for this
just
section.
make one more comment to that, which is I'll talk to you separately, Lynn. But the idea is to move beyond just talking about these issues to actually having action, and I'm good
Fair
at
enough.
Brian, over to you. Last question before we move on.
So Lynn,
Next
I can
topic.
only tell you, Lynn, what I'm doing with my Rotary International is 1.2 million people invested in basically 142 countries all over the world, including the islands. And Rotary has successfully basically eliminated polio by boots on the ground and so that's what I'm doing with my technology. So Rotary International, think about it.
I spoke to Rotary DC about a month ago. I would love to pursue that. I'm a huge fan of Rotary. Would love to pursue this.
Good. Yeah, I think good luck with it.
Very good. Thank you very much. And now we're going to go to Mark Prinsky. Mark, you had a topic that you want to share. Jump in.
I just want to, I put it in the chat. I just want to say that if anybody's interested in public speaking, that you haven't had enough of it, that you need something, there's a very good coach named Tim David, who tends to be pricey, but he gives away a lot of information in these free seminars. And there's one coming up at 10 Pacific, 1 Eastern, and I put the information in the chat.
All right, very good. Thanks for sharing that. Let me just ask you, is that something that you're personally pursuing, Mark is trying to be on stage.
Yes, I am very definitely, and I recommend this for Cindy, for example, if she were here, that she should watch it. That because he's got, I've looked at a lot of this stuff, and he's got one of the best systems of figuring it out how to do all this stuff step by step, and whether you do it with him as your coach or whether you do it for free on the outside, it's really worth listening to everything that he's
Okay.
thought of up to this point.
What's the
Good.
name?
Well, thank you.
I
That's
put it in the
great.
chat. I put it in the chat. It's at 10 o'clock. I'll recopy the chat again.
Okay, greatly appreciate it. That's a great thing to share, Mark. Very generous of you. Let's go to Richard Boyd. Richard, you had a topic that you wanted to share with us. You kind of unpacked it at the top of the call. Just kind of rewind and tell us what's on your mind.
Yeah, just very briefly. For a while now, I think we're all very interested, especially in this political climate we're in right now, about this issue of what's real, what's true, especially in the age of AI. Years ago, I was part of a task force and a group in 2017 that included the RAND Corporation. It was led by Shep Barge, looking at this topic of information warfare. Later on, we started creating war games around this concept of one of them was, as you see right there in that picture, was looking at cyber warriors and how do we create more of those and what characteristics do they need? How do we cultivate them? Now I'm talking to the intelligence community, and they've raised an issue and said we've got a big national security concern, which is that we don't have enough we're not graduating enough qualified people who can get security clearances who are interested in joining that community. And however you feel about that community, I have come around to understanding that there is a sort of detente we can, if we invest in that community where we have this ability to communicate among agencies across countries, not just our allies, but even our adversaries, when there are these back channels sort of communications happening, trust can be accomplished and we can avoid some of the conflicts. So when I talk to some of the folks in that environment, some of them are saying things like, $1 million spent in intelligence can avoid $1 trillion of like invading Iraq and things like that with bad information. So, but that leads to the war game part of this, which had me thinking about what you were talking about. When I was at Lockheed, we actually modeled entire countries, and started looking at things like, if I'm training USAID folks and you're looking at a fact like, if I've got a population model of everybody that lives in Afghanistan and I've got thousands of agent-based models representing all of the different sort of cultures and language and thoughts and feelings. And I decide, what if I went and built a school for girls in Helmand Province? Who's going to like it? Who's going to be neutral? Who's going to be angry about it enough to where they're going to blow up the school, set it on fire, and try to shoot Malala? Those kinds of things. That intelligence gathering is a critical skill. And like I said here, what we were doing back then is modeling using Dime and PMEZ, and so it is the hearts and minds and the social elements of that. So I'm interested now in building deeper models to help us understand better what's happening in these environments around the world, but also thinking, how do you build simulation tools and recruiting tools to get the right people in those positions later?
Richard, you just mentioned an acronym that a lot of people are not going to know, this DIME PMEZ. Why don't you tell us what that is, please?
Yeah, they're in the lower half of my screen if you see that. So DIME is, I'll try to remember what they all are, but it's like diplomacy, information, military, and economics. So all the sort of values around that. And if you're trying to model what's going on in a country, whether you're an economist or in the State Department or whatever, you want to understand those factors. And if we're trying to actually make a model of a country or of the world to understand things more deeply, that's one of the constructs. The one below that is PMEZ, which is political, military, economic, social, infrastructure, information. And then ASCOPE goes into more of the social part of it, Brian. So I forget what that acronym actually stands for, but it's like the the structures, the capabilities, the sort of thought processes and cultures and traditions, that kind of thing. And ICP is just information collection process. So if you're an analyst, and these are critical thinking skills, and that's kind of what I found interesting just for this group too, is the folks in these communities are raising their hands saying, we're not graduating people who have these skills, who understand how to think deeply and critically and can look at information collected and decide what's true and what isn't. But also it's being exacerbated by the fact that now we have AI creating video artifacts and written artifacts, which are not true. So it is a critical issue. And I don't know who in this organization, but I'm interested in talking to anybody in this organization who's admiring this problem along with us. We'll be working with that community to try to help them. That's kind of my piece on it.
Thanks, Richard. Any questions for what Richard has brought to the table today? Let's see any hands.
I'll just say,
Mhm.
I worked on something called Stability Ops with Peter Perlow one time. And we were trying to do a simulation around all that stuff. So I'm happy to connect with you about that, Richard.
It's a hard problem.
So, Richard, my question is, this worked though, was it for essentially military objectives? What was your overall objective? Who paid for this and what was the goal of it?
Which piece? So I mentioned a couple
The-
different projects there, but
Yeah,
current,
you tell me. Where it seems to me, well, they were doing Afghanistan because we were going to have a war right there, and then we needed to know what was going on in that. So this system is for war purposes and probably paid for by the Department of Defense. Now, that's a wild assumption.
well, my point is that part of what we do in what's done in the intelligence community is to understand more deeply what's going on in other countries. How are the people feeling, thinking? Like, for example, well, how do people really feel today about what's happening in Russia? Are people really for Putin? Are they against him? Can we try to reach those people using the Agency for Global Media, for example, and try to move them to a different position, just like we did during the pandemic when we're trying to convince people to take safety precautions and to shelter at home. How do you do that? And it turns out, like, if there are people who are entrenched or embedded, what Richard Carson would say are, the base folks. There's no swing people, but if you want to get to the swing people, you identify the people that are susceptible, and you start communicating at least with counter narratives to those folks. And try to move them to something that is more helpful. So you could apply that to smoking cessation. You can apply it to health. And that was my point, Brian. We did apply it to health and we had outcomes in that space. And so there's lots of purposes for it. It's not really, it's about the avoidance of war is what I would say. Like you want to avoid, there's lots of ways to solve conflicts between nations and people. One of them is violence. One of them is financial, and the other is intelligence. And intelligence, to me, is a better investment to address conflicts, whether it's in the Middle East or elsewhere. So that's
a loose interpretation of Sun Tzu is win all without fighting.
Right, but just to make as we sit here, gentlemen, right now, we are waiting to find out if Iran will launch a major ballistic attack on Israel and what the extent of Israel's reaction to that. We are sitting on the verge of World War III this very morning. So what's our intelligence going back and forth, Richard? What are they?
For example,
Yeah,
like what I would have said, what we did, I remember this conversation when they were looking in Iran at creating nuclear, like having a nuclear capability. One of the propositions in that room was, let's go at international expense, let's go build thorium molten salt reactors for them. So here's your nuclear capability. You can't weaponize thorium, right? And it's safe. It doesn't melt down. So let's do that. Let's invest in that R&D and build that for them. And that's a lot cheaper than letting them go the other route and ending up with nuclear weapons. That's the point.
I mean, the reason that we have such a good body of knowledge about the nuclear reactors that we're currently using is we intentionally wanted to build something that would give us derivative products to build nuclear weapons. right? And had we pursued some other, just pure, creating energy for its own sake, as opposed to those derivative things, downstream, we would have ended up with different designs. Right. So it's just, it's really interesting that we've kind of inherited, simply because that was our default engineering, right? That ended up becoming a problem, right? Because it proliferated the ability to do, that kind of bomb making elsewhere. Doug, you were nodding your head. Please join us.
Yeah. So, I've been being on the optimistic side of how to save lives instead of destroy lives. I wrote an article, AI's Quest to Save 1 million and then 1 billion lives.
Oh yeah, right.
And right now there's about 63 million people that are going to die this year. Unfortunately, 5 million more men than women. So that's a little bit sexist, but it is what it is. Actually, it's because men are reckless, personally. It's like, I've heard like Steve Wozniak say, AGI will arrive when a robot AI could go into a house and make coffee at a stranger's house. But I was thinking about this as like my definition of AGI is, when AI can save 1 million lives a year. And then I started thinking, well, when can we say, can AI save 1 billion lives in a year? And so anyway, I've been thinking about that. And, the one thing is there's been 5 technologies that have saved 1 billion lives through history. Toilets, so the question is, can AI be better than toilets? Fertilizer.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Yeah.
We need to put together with the toilets, the washing of hands.
Yeah. Clean water and clean underwear is it's really helped. But then there's fertilizer, synthetic fertilizer, blood transfusion was another one, according to this one article. Green revolution, and then vaccines are the 5 technologies or inventions that have saved 1 billion lives. So the question is can AI be used to the benefit of mankind as opposed to destroy? Unfortunately, in war, like right now, Ukraine, has 2 million drones that they're going to be deploying. I'm sure Russia, maybe not sure that is big, but it could be. Those are robots, that are weaponized. So, are we going to have more deaths from AI, or are we going to have more lives saved? So this is our challenge for the 21st century.
Yeah. So we are at the bottom of the hour. So I just want to remind everyone that if you have other obligations, we thank you for joining us for our formal first hour. We're now going into overtime, where we welcome you to stay with us, stay with the dialogue, ask other questions, and bring up other topics. Okay, Doug, I cut you off a little bit, or is there anything?
Yeah, no, but I was basically there. I guess the one thing is, when I was looking at, in fact, I'm writing a book with Dr. Harvey Castro, a new book, and Alan Smithson, about technologies by 2030.
Well, this sounds dangerous. You and Castro writing together? Come on.
Yeah, again. Yeah, we wrote one and now we're writing another one. But the 2 technologies I wrote about, one is transportation, because right now 1.3 million people die on the road system every year. And the question is when will we be able to save 1 million people's lives on the road system? Unfortunately, I think that's in more the 2040s timeframe. And then the question is when can healthcare, like right now, 3 million people die from medical errors every year, according to the World Health Organization. 125,000 people here in the United States die because they don't follow their medical treatment plan. And so I think, by 2023, 33, excuse me, maybe we can save 1 million lives on healthcare using AI. So we'll see if that's correct. Those are my predictions.
Yeah, I'm going to throw in, it's probably lower in your list, but I would probably put in regarding food supply that refrigeration has probably been a really big technology in terms of saving lives, right?
Yeah.
Because of less bacterial spread and having wholesome food, that's still, consumable by the time it reaches its destination.
Yeah, pasteurization was 250 million. I'm looking to see if
so Doug, you call yourself an
Air
optimist?
conditioning was 2 million. Let's see, refrigeration. I don't see it off the top here, but
I'm just saying, I would just ask that, you take a look.
Okay.
I have one comment.
Brian,
for
your
Doug.
hand is up.
Just Doug, well, I said this at our last meeting, and I truly believe it. The story about like Bonnie and Clyde, bank robbing was a really profitable, a very celebrity oriented kind of business until it got so bad that the federal government, the FBI, Elliot Ness. I think that we're going to go through that, gentlemen. I think AI, misinformation, disinformation is going to just rack havoc, and then there will be better legislation, more enforcement, better tools, and I'm just shocked. I think the most demanded job in our near future will be security analysts, security specialists, because the demand is going to be so high. So I don't know if that's an optimistic or pessimistic, but we all.
Ben, you
well,
put
That's what I
a
think.
bottom line
comment.
is don't trust anything digitally.
Yeah.
Like so if you get a text, even if you get a phone call, like I'm going to be making an investment in a company, I'm bringing the person a check
Yeah.
because like I want to make sure I see who you are. It's
Well,
really hard.
you heard
to
what Vint Cerf, who's basically one of the founders of the internet, said. Hey, if you got pictures that you like, print them on paper, dude.
Yeah, he's the advocate of digital vellum, because we don't actually have a storage technology yet that is durable enough that exceeds the ability to preserve information as well as vellum does in the printed world. So it's
Oh, is that what? Yeah, is that what that
Yeah.
means?
Yep.
Vellum.
Vellum is the most durable substrate, versus just regular paper
How
to
about that?
preserve, very, very valuable texts and information. Ben, you are basically giving us the plot from The Day the Earth Stood Still, the second version, where Keanu Reeves, right, in his Klaatu says, "Oh, I'm here, right? I'm an advocate of Earth. I'm not here to save the Earth for you. I'm here to save the Earth from you." Say
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we start with the first premise because Doug's representation speaks a strong value of humanity, and preservation and amplification of humanity is an objective. And I wonder if that's how we want to start, because when the robots take over, they're going to start talking about cockroaches and people as a pestilence on this earth, and maybe we ought to rethink that.
Yeah.
I'm
Ben,
being sarcastic, of course, but
You've been on the beach too long, Ben. You've
No,
been
no,
on the
no.
beach.
Well, actually, there's a well-documented experiment that says the optimization that the system was given was make paper clips, right? That's what you should do. And it basically, killed all the humans in the process of optimizing to paperclip production, because you didn't specifically call out all the parameters that you wanted, all right, regarding the task, right? So, we have some, well-documented, ill-defined, task requirements, if the system is able to, act on all the things. So guardrails
so
are probably a good thing.
Doug, defend yourself. Defend your priorities.
Yeah, well, my priority is humanity. I'm reading Fei Lee's new book. And she's out of Stanford with human-centered AI. So it has Fei ever talked to the people-centered internet?
We really should have her
Yeah.
sometime.
Well, every time, I'm just going to make a general statement. Every time you bring up a name of somebody and you actually know that person and can issue an invitation, let's act on that, right? Coordinate with team members like, Lynn or Ben or me, right? So that, you know, we know it's happening. But yeah, I mean, this is a well-connected community. Please.
Yeah, yeah. And
act on
unfortunately, I
those
don't have her. I don't know her
I'm
personally.
just saying, if you do,
Yeah.
do it. And if you know a person who knows a person who can issue the invitation, all right, we would love to have that. Go ahead.
Well,
That was my commercial, okay, for this
Yeah.
particular episode. Go ahead, Brian. And
I
then
was just what I said to my engineers who are young and they don't know Star Trek, go watch the episode from the original series, The Ultimate Computer, when the AI takes over a starship and starts killing all the other starships. Yeah, baby.
okay.
Remember that episode, The Ultimate Computer already.
I do. Mark.
Yeah, I want to bring up another issue because I'm not with Doug on let's preserve humanity at all costs. Humanity is a pimple in the universe, and whether we
So you're
last,
not on Team Human, huh?
I'm not on Team Human. I'm actually not on Team Human. I like being human. I think it's great, but when we preserve it, it also has a lot of negative effects on other things. But the point that I wanted to bring up for the group is that I've been thinking that I don't think you can do critical thinking these days without AI. So
Ah,
that while I know, Brian, we're going to always have this, but
okay, I'm gonna
so for
mute myself.
example,
Okay.
without AI, you really can't detect a fake. You really can't. There's a lot of things that have passed our level of being critical, our human level of being critical. And I think that's going to be a real issue in the future. And so trying to make people with the 20th century idea of critical thinking, which is what we're trying to do, is not going to be enough, in my opinion.
Okay.
My humble opinion.
Okay. And tennis match. Brian, we're not going to have too many volleys on this one. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I mean, once again, I vehemently disagree with brother Mark over there because the thing is, your your solution is to trust an AI tool, which is trusting more of the machine. No, I believe I'm from, Ben is from South Chicago. I'm from Newark, New Jersey. I don't believe anything that anybody says. It has to be confirmed, double checked, and that's why I'm talking to you gentlemen to get better and more disparate opinions so that we humans like me can make decisions. Yeah, baby.
Okay.
That's my case and I'm
And if
sticking
I
to it.
can I go one more round?
Well, we're gonna, this is gonna conclude this tennis match, okay? Because I don't want this to just go back and forth. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
I'm done. I'm done.
my perspective is that AI is a part of us. It's not a separate thing. It's something we created. Algorithmic thinking is just a new way of thinking. And that if we see ourselves as separate from AI and see it as something that we're in competition with instead of being part of ourselves, then we're going to run into trouble.
Yeah. I might point everyone to, looking up Holon, the word HOLON, which is a way of looking at things as wholes and parts, right? That my hand has atoms that are part of molecules that are part of tissue that ultimately make up this hand that are then part of my full body. And I'm part of it's this interlocking system of wholes and parts. And there's nothing wrong. I've written a lot of papers in human-centered design, ergonomics, that kind of work. However, I've come to, realize that, only optimizing to, human-centeredness can change the fitness landscape to the point that, humans can't thrive, right? So you really need to take an expanded view, right? It's a both and, that human-centered design has to be a subsystem of planetary system design, right? That if you're not optimizing for the entire system, then you're going to end up with a problem, right? And so it's just perspective, all right? There's nothing wrong with human-centered design per se, but when it's the only goal, then it's like the sun revolving around the earth, right? It's actually not the right construct. So I have said my piece on that. Ben, your lips are moving. All right. I can see that
Yeah.
you're about to say something. I've been
Well,
watching you too long.
as we move into, I look on this as the term I use is cognitors, that there are many kinds of cognitors, of things that can think, and that our collective exchange does not have to distinguish just human cognitors and systems as well. That in concert, the passive things are now active, and things that couldn't think can now think, and can be a part of a collective intelligence and exchange. I'm not talking Borg, Brian, but I am talking about the about an ability to have concert and community of cognitors that can engage in decision situations, human and non-human.
Yeah.
And
I might also inject, Ben, that if you look at, cellular and molecular biology, there's a term called interactors, okay, which are, two cells or two systems that are, have a way of dealing with each other, right? The difference between, a virus and a bacterium, coming into contact with cells, right? Those are interactors. That's a useful construct for thinking about all kinds of things interacting with each other. They're not necessarily the same, but there's a boundary layer where that interaction is going to take place and it's describable, and you can either optimize or prevent interaction based on understanding the interactors.
I have one small, very small.
Mhm.
Just want to remind everybody, I'm a former 10-year federal trial lawyer. And if this little conversation you're having with your little computer comes up with the decision and it turns out that someone gets hurt, wait for the lawyers to show up suing you. And you can't say, oh, well, my cognitor is responsible. I'm not responsible. No.
oh, you guys always want to throat to choke.
Yeah, there you go. I saw your comment earlier. That's about it.
If you take the phrase, a nation of laws, not men, laws could be put into a system independent of people, right? And, if you set that in motion, right, the laws would be, simply acted upon, by the system independent of the humans. And I don't think that's the intention of the phrase, but it could happen, right? If you, said laws are more important than, the men that it's guiding, right? And I mean men as humans, right? Not gender. So at any rate,
Well, that's why we have juries, and that laws
That
are
ma-
ineffective
I know,
unless they're
but you've
enforced.
got plenty of science fiction movies that show that, you're going up in front of the, the judge who is not human, right?
Yeah.
And, that's just a projection of, a reality that could happen, but, the question is it desirable? Would you ever want to go there? Right? Well,
Yeah,
it's imaginable. That's all.
Yeah, Chief Justice Roberts, his State of the Court address this year was talking about AI and judges' inference and human, and then that reminded me of inference by computers as well, right? And do we want AI judges, right, or do we need a human judge that really infers a situation and tries to analyze it? But then the question is, how do you get rid of bias? Right? Is there human bias and then there's AI bias? So these are our challenges.
I'll tell you how you get rid of bias. You throw him out the window, right?
Throw who out the window?
Defenestrating
bias. There's a
Oh,
title for you. Defenestrating bias.
Yeah. That was from an old Firesign Theater record, right?
Oh, okay.
There was a
How can you
disagreement.
be in
We
two
threw the
places at
person out the
once?
window. We are now unanimous.
How can
That's
you be
okay.
in
I'm gonna write that one
two,
down. Throw
how
that
can
guy
you
out the
be in
window.
two
That would make it
two
unanimous.
places at once when you're not anywhere at all?
Yeah.
What? Whom?
Okay. We're coming up to the top of the hour. Do we have another topic, or do we want to call it a session? All right, let me just jump around here. Ben, any additional thoughts that you want to bring to the table today?
No, thank you. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Doug
I'm
Hulen.
fine.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great topic.
Well, again, keep writing with Harvey. That sounds quite interesting. Mark, thank you for the pointer to the speaking piece that's about to happen in 10 minutes. That's a good pointer. Any other thoughts that you want to share today?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All
This
right,
is always-
Lynn?
This is always
I'm
pleasant.
good. Thank you.
Okay. The Coco, any closing thoughts, sir? You're on mute. Yeah, that was nothing. Okay, got it. All right, that your visual cues are great. And Yeager, thank you for joining us. Thanks everyone for being part of this edition
Thank
of
you so much.
PCI Community Forum.
Thank
And
you,
we look
gentlemen.
forward to having you on our next calls.
And
Take
Kevin,
care. And all
Kevin,
the
I
best.
Thank you.
sent,
Thank you.
I sent
Bye-bye.
an email to Cindy about the thing. You might want to alert her as well.
Hey,
Very
Duke.
good. Thank you so much. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Peace. Thank you, Duke.
Bye.